You're listening to the Fan Club Podcast, where two polar opposites experience each other's fandoms for the very first time.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fan Club Podcast. My name is Sarah.
This is Matthew.
And this is episode 33, and we are covering Loki today, and we have two very special guests. Say hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
So we have Frances and Kait here today. Frances and I met through a podcast called Potterless, and we met LeakyCon 2018, is that correct?
We met LeakyCon, we may have met at 2018, but we definitely met at 2019, and then literally the next week we were both at This Might Get Weird with
Oh, that's
Grace
right.
Lee.
Yeah, we were at TMGW together. That's weird.
It was like,
yeah,
so
we,
like just the melding
kind
of
of
the
run in the
moments.
same podcast circles a lot. So yeah, and then Kait is her friend, is averse at all the Marvel stuff, correct?
Yeah. I just say that I'm basically like Frances's sidekick when it comes to when she wants to talk Marvel. I'm the person she reaches out to because I probably also watch the same like Easter egg videos. Like I have a dog named Zemo after Baron Zemo. Like all things Marvel.
That's
we
a
got
great
you.
name for a dog.
Oh, it's the best name for a dog.
I love when people name their pets after fandom things. When we first started this podcast, Frances reached out to me and was like, "Can we be on your Loki episode?" I remember this conversation because you love Loki, right?
So I don't know if I was attracted to Tom Hiddleston slightly before, but then Loki came out and it just, the camera angles, it is, I have calmed down on my obsession with Tom Hiddleston in the last year. However, Kait will debate that.
I mean, does it have anything to do with the fact that has a baby now? So I think there's like you're trying to set a reasonable boundary because you respect him, but the white button-up shirt for Tom Hiddleston impacted you the same way that Colin Firth in a white button-up shirt in Pride and Prejudice impacted me. Let's just put it that way.
That's very true.
I was first introduced to Tom Hiddleston not by any of his work, but by the fact that he dated Taylor Swift.
Well, now you're getting into Kait's other obsession.
Oh, if you want me to quote some Taylor Swift during this podcast, I got you all, but I'll try to keep myself focusing on Loki. But yes.
That was the first time I was like introduced to him as a human being. But I hadn't seen anything that he had been in up until that point.
Matthew, what was your first memory of Tom Hiddleston?
Or, I don't remember the order that they came out. Maybe Crimson Peak?
Oh,
Frances got you on that one. If you want to talk about Tom Hiddleston, Crimson Peak, she's got you.
I don't do scary. I don't do scary movies.
I saw Crimson Peak for free through AMC years and years ago.
Nice.
As part of their early viewer program or whatever when the AMC rewards first started.
I've seen like a single screen grab from that entire movie. I didn't know Tom Hiddleston was even in it.
He's not in a whole lot.
Yes, he is one of the main characters. I don't do scary movies like at all. I don't watch the trailers for them at all. But
I wouldn't call this movie scary.
Well, because I am obsessed with Tom Hiddleston, I took a page out of Kait's book and Wikipedia'd the movie so I could figure out what was scary about it and like read the synopsis. And I was like, okay, I think I can watch this. Because I really like Mia Wasikowska, and then Jessica Chastain's also in it. So like it's just a stacked cast. And I was like, okay, I can do this for Tom. I can do this for Tom. So I watched it. It's really good. I've watched it many times since just because it's like so good.
I would call it more suspense thriller and less of a horror.
I literally read the synopsis of Midsommar before I watched it because I was like, I don't know if I can handle this without... My anxiety can't handle this.
I was in the movie It. I was watching it, and I started getting so much fear of it that I went to the bathroom and read the Wikipedia summary so I would not be as terrified about who's going to die or the possibilities running through my head. So yes, I have absolutely read a Wikipedia summary during a movie to prevent myself from being afraid.
So yeah, we are covering Loki today, and that little weird Tom Hiddleston side tangent.
What are you talking about? These are all variants of Tom Hiddleston. These are all just variants of him.
Have you not
Yes.
seen the theory that Tom Hiddleston is actually Loki? Like, let's be real.
What are actors except for variants of these characters?
Persevering.
So, when the show was first announced, what was your first reaction to getting an entire TV show dedicated to him, not just a single movie?
That's a really good question because I don't really remember. I just all of a sudden, I feel like they probably announced it right before COVID or at the beginning of COVID or, something. And so I don't really remember because I was like, okay, cool. I went and Kate and I saw Endgame together, another tangent. The power went out right in the middle of Endgame. So we got a quick little intermission on Endgame. But that was really what, I had seen most of the MCU movies to that point. But that was what really set off my obsession with the MCU. And so I'm sure they had plans for Loki in 2018 when that movie came out. And then I'm sure the pandemic kind of threw a wrench in everything, as we know it has. So I don't really remember when they announced this show how I felt. I wasn't obsessed with Tom Hiddleston at the time, so wasn't following him like I am now.
I think my first response was really just how, right? Because we saw him die in the first part of Infinity War. We saw him get the Tesseract in Endgame, but the question is it's wait, which one are we following up with? Because at that point we didn't really know what the synopsis was going to be. Was it what happened to Loki between Ragnarok and Infinity War? Because he had maybe gone on another adventure during that time. Was it a prequel? Because we knew that there were other things that were going to come out that could be prequels. I just didn't really understand what part of, ironically, the timeline this was going to impact. Because Kevin Feige always does not tell us everything we need to know, right? So that was my first thought, was where are we meeting him at? And so I think that where they picked up episode 1 was really important.
This show is, because we're kind of watching the MCU at this point in time a little bit out of order from where it came out, just because we wanted to do all the TV shows together. I don't know. I guess we're a glutton for punishment because it's a lot. But between WandaVision, Falcon, and now Loki, they all could not be more different. Yes. And it's been a little bit of whiplash. Just going from one to one to one.
As an audience member who hasn't just binged them all, that was how it kind of felt too. We got at least the benefit of week to week rather than back to back like you all probably have done. But at the same time, it was where it was where am I? And it was a question that had to be answered on a lot of the reaction stuff was, where are we in the timeline? That was always the question, right? So,
it's still the question. Yeah. It's still the question on everything coming out because the timeline, not only in the movies has been altered, but our timeline of when we're getting these releases has been altered because of the pandemic. Because WandaVision was supposed to lead directly into Doctor Strange. It took 1.5 years for us to get to that point. So
Black Widow.
Yeah.
When Black Widow was supposed to come out was during the pandemic.
So kind of getting into the first episode, we've alluded to the fact that it came out in 2021. I do remember, Frances and I talk a lot on Twitter, and I remember when you were live tweeting this entire series. And at the time, I had no frame of reference for anything MCU. I knew who Loki was, but I didn't know enough to know what the hell you were talking about. And so most of the tweets I just kind of scrolled right past because I had nothing to say. But I just vividly remember you being so excited. I remember you lost your mind when the second season was announced.
Yeah, I did. I very much did. Yes.
The second season was just announced not that long ago.
So episode 1 is entitled Glorious Purpose, and we start in New York City in 2012, and it's basically the scene from Endgame, isn't it?
So I loved instantly that this show was completely different from anything else in the MCU because the score is incredible. I can talk about this score in every episode. It is so good. Natalie Holt was on another level using that theremin.
Editing Sarah here. The theremin that Frances is referring to here, fun fact, because we did not clarify what that was, is a musical instrument that does not require physical touch to play. Little fun fact for you.
So good. And then the Marvel logo turns green and gold. And
I was going to mention that, yeah.
Up to this point, it's only been red, or I think it may have been purple for Black Panther. Like, I don't think they had deviated from the red and white.
Well, and then in Captain Marvel, it was Stan Lee.
Right. Yeah, they really haven't deviated much to this point when Loki comes out with the red and white. And so it's green and gold, which is, a sign that this is completely different from what we've already seen. You've already mentioned that the 3 shows to this point are, completely all over the place. But it's also like, is this a nod to it being completely out of time and space from where we've been to this point? Probably.
So this scene is it exactly the scene from Endgame?
It is exactly.
That's what I thought. I was like, they did not get everybody back just to refilm the same thing.
Yeah, and Tom Hiddleston talked about how that costume fit him the same. They brought the costume from 2012.
What's important about this, and like even the previous scene, is that the credits that are telling you where he's locating are analog. And that's really important. And even when we get into the TVA in this episode, is it very much feels like it's old fashioned. And I just say that even like, if you think about the fact that like that opening shot actually in Avengers, the original one of New York, it actually had a very high tech text. Whereas when we get into this world, it's automatically priming us for the idea that he's going to be a little bit more of it's more like it has these flashbacks in time as if something about the TVA is in a different timeline, right? Is like, it kind of feels like the 70s, right? They use all that orange and stuff.
I also want to mention that watching Tom Hiddleston reenact the slow-mo slap in talk shows when he was promoting this, because I want to say if they didn't use the slow-mo slap in the promos, like before the show, it was like in the immediate aftermath, he was on the all on the late night talk shows, and everyone was like, "Well, how did you do that?" And it's like him reenacting how they did it, just gold, great content for the internet. Highly recommend looking it up.
I will say, speaking of that, I will say that Loki was the only one that of the TV shows that have come out that I felt compelled to watch it at 2 a.m. every morning. Like, I'd wake up at 2 to watch this one be released because I didn't want a single spoiler about it.
I didn't set my alarm like Kate did for 2 a.m. or in her case, she probably stayed up a lot until 2 a.m. to watch it. I would just like naturally wake up around 5 and end up watching it because I was like, okay, I'm not getting on Twitter. I'm just going to watch this at 5 a.m. on my phone I couldn't. So at the time I had an epileptic dog. And so I was like, I still am just out of habit. I was very wary of watching my TV in a dark room because I didn't want the like flashing lights to affect him in any way. And so I would just like fetal position around my phone watching like all the Marvel shows that came out. So I would later watch it on my big screen TV and like absorb more of the details.
I haven't quite done that because most of the things that I've watched that come out week to week, I'll just watch it the next day on Hulu. Or I'll binge watch it all in one go.
What about you, Matthew? Because you're the one that apparently makes Sarah watch these movies, right? Because you're eventually going to watch Harry Potter. Well, I mean, like, the whole concept of this podcast, right, is that you're watching his fandom, he's watching yours. So did you watch them live?
No. So I know what has happened in all the TV shows. Just when they first came out, we really didn't have a whole lot of time.
So, because when this show came out, our son was born in early April of 2021. So we had a newborn at this point in time.
So a lot of the shows, I didn't have time to really watch when they first came out.
We were, focusing on keeping a human alive.
Yeah. But I would keep up with it like on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. So I've known I know what happens in like Hawkeye, Moon Knight, She-Hulk. I know what happens in them all.
He doesn't really care about spoilers. He'll read anything.
Yeah.
Got it.
I don't know about like.
I don't know the full details, but I know the major points in what happens.
He has been shocked by a couple of things.
There's a few things that I forgot.
Yeah.
Because it's also been over a year since I've really read anything about Loki.
The soldiers appear in the desert and they identify him as a variant. He has absolutely no idea what's going on. They basically reset the timeline and they arrive at the TVA. There is very 60s, 70s-esque.
Mm-hmm. Just like Miss Minutes.
Yeah, we also we get Miss Minutes, which I will talk about it in a second. They hand the Tesseract over to the receptionist.
Or throws the Tesseract at the receptionist to catalog.
Yeah. They go through intake, and then we meet Miss Minutes, who explains what the secret timeline and the multiverse variants and the multiverse war. I like Miss Minutes. Apparently, there's a lot of Miss Minutes merch in the parks, in the Disney parks.
There is. I've seen it online. I feel like we get a little bit of an answer, but I still don't understand if she is pre-programmed, if she is alive. What is Miss Minutes? We will probably.
I think I don't want to spoil who the dude was at the end for you, because we'll learn more about his real identity later.
Okay.
I think he created it.
That's
the thing about it's the contrast, right? It's the fact that Miss Minutes is a dynamic of like not 70s and 60s, where a ticket system is 70s, 60s, a rotating scroll is 60s, 70s, but this is an actual 3D rendering of something that looks tangible. So that's what's interesting about Miss Minutes.
I think he created it in the future.
Yeah. But also shout out to Tara Strong, the voice of our generation, Tommy Pickles.
Matthew is a huge 90s, early 2000s cartoon nerd.
Just an absolute voice acting icon.
I never even followed cartoons as a kid, and I know who Tara Strong is. So
right.
I mean, didn't you grow up watching Multiverse Girls or no?
No.
Really?
No. My mom didn't allow cartoons when I was a kid. That's a strong word. She really disliked them because she found them very annoying. So I was never really exposed to them. And I have older brothers that are much, much older than me. So it also the things you grow up on are different when you have a large age gap, I feel like.
Right.
Highly recommend the Barney documentary for that concept, because a lot of this child production, and especially preschool and above, is not at all targeted towards adults, and the actual psychological response of people at different stages of life are completely different. But it's so enjoyable for one stage and absolutely torture for another stage. And that's in itself why cartoons and stuff like that. So your mom's situation, it's just psychology. It wasn't actually her as a person even.
We also missed the dude in that one room having to reprint out all those sheets every time Loki would talk, which is also really funny.
It is funny, and I have a question about that, because I would think, as much as Loki likes to talk, that stack of papers would be so much thicker than it is.
The man does love a speech. He loves a speech.
Yeah. But a lot of that probably would have been on, his... I'm just using this one speech, for example. His speech in Germany, when Captain America, Iron Man, take him in, would probably be on one sheet.
Right.
One whole sheet would be that.
Unless it's printed really small.
Does it include all the text he says in the normal timeline? And if he would have read it, similar to what happens later in the episode when Mobius allows him to see stuff, could he have actually seen all the dialogue he actually says in his whole life, or is it this variant's only stack?
It is just until May of 2012.
Even though they have footage of him in the other timeline, though? That's why I wonder if it is where it could have more.
It's for each particular variant.
Is that in the comics?
None of this is in the comics.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I don't know the comics, so.
Remember if the TVA has been in the comics or not.
The MCU's kind of been off the comics for quite a while.
They come back to it.
They have comics like the comics like sprinkled.
Episode 5 has a lot of comics in it, but that's in the future.
Yeah.
So the explanation of the sacred timeline and all of its variants and all that stuff is giving me butterfly effect.
Right.
I don't know if that's completely off base there. And then this animation, this little like intro video that Miss Bendis is giving us, is very Schoolhouse Rock, which I've only seen like maybe a handful of episodes of, but just the way that the style of it is.
Yeah, it gave me Hanna-Barbera vibes, which is Flintstones and Jetsons.
Yes.
And like I feel like with the time that they're like the era that they're going with like the 70s feel, I feel like that's kind of what they were aiming for, and I feel like they totally accomplished it.
Oh, they definitely did it on purpose to harken back to that vibe.
But also terrifying.
So yeah, the TVA was in the Marvel comics. It was Thor issue 372 in October of '86.
Oh, so it is comic accurate then.
Kinda. The leader of it in here is
It's like
different.
a comic Easter egg. It's like a tip of the hat.
The leader is different than the leader that we saw. The leader that we saw is not the true leader in the comics.
Which really tells you how, frankly, how I was going to say filmmakers, I guess showrunners.
And then
Kevin Feige. It's just Kevin Feige. It's just his master.
They love the comics so much that they do all these tip of the hat things that the average fan like me would never in a million years know.
We've seen, or I'm just saying we as in people that have watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the TVA was also in there. And TVA...
You mentioned that to me.
And the TVA is also in Werewolf by Night. Some of the people from
We
the TVA.
debated covering Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's just...
Okay, so Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. question for you, Matthew.
Yeah.
When Loki goes to get scanned and the guy is asking him, "Are you a robot?" and Loki's like, "Wait, do people not know they're robots?" Do you think that was a nod to the LMD storyline on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I totally forgot about that storyline. I completely forgot about that.
I wonder if that is a nod.
I think it's also a Nebula nod, too.
Could be.
No, but Nebula knows she's a robot.
But it's the whole fact that she starts out like Gamora and has all these body parts added to her. And so she's kind of a robot by design of Thanos, so...
Maybe. That would make a lot of sense. Because the TVA was introduced in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. years before it was in the MCU. In the end of Season 4.
Yeah.
Was when it was introduced, and the TV that we saw here was just the lower levels of TVA,
Hope
not the powerfuls.
Hope we're not spoiling a show that has been out for a long time.
It's not even airing anymore.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is unfortunately not canon anymore, although I will argue that seasons 1 through 4 should be canon, and after
It is canon.
After season 5, it goes off the rails, and I will argue that I agree that should not be canon.
Wasn't season 5 the Inhuman season, or was that 3?
I don't know. I think that's sprinkled through all of them. I rewatched it this spring. I should know better, but I don't.
I think season 3 was the Inhumans, and then season 4 was the one when Gemma got taken by the obelisk, right?
Yeah, because season 5 is where it goes off the rails, so that sounds about right. So
because
Kate and I are just over here being like,
yeah,
okay.
season 5 on is when they're in like outer space, fighting different wars and stuff.
We're both just like, yeah, the obelisk, outer space.
I've always said Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is MCU because they deal with the aftermath of Thor: Dark World, and they deal with the aftermath of Hydra, or the whole thing with Hydra infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. after Winter Soldier.
So anyway.
We'll save this for the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast, okay?
Yeah, if Matthew wants to do an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. rewatch, I will join him on that.
There's just a lot.
So then
that could be on the Patreon.
Yeah, we might cover. We're thinking about starting a Patreon. for all the bonus content, and we might cover Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on that eventually.
Well, I will join. I will join when that decision is made.
I have never watched it, so I can't be Frances's sidekick for that.
Well, I'll just do a season and episode.
So, yeah, season and episode.
I was like, there's so much to cover, you would have to do it like that.
So then we go to 1549 France. We're never going to get to this scene.
Okay.
And we get introduced to Owen Wilson, who is the weirdest choice in this entire thing.
Oh my god, I love this choice so much. I think no one
So
could.
weird.
I don't think that there is another person that could have been casted for this role, and that includes Luke, his brother, right? Like, absolutely
I feel
has to be Owen.
I feel differently having finished the show now, but initially when I first saw his face, who I did not know he was in the show. Okay, I need to preface that. I had no idea he was even in the MCU at all.
He was almost kicked out of the MCU also. So he posted a picture of him in his costume.
It's a suit. How is that spoilery?
Yeah, he definitely got an angry call from Kevin Feige's lawyers.
No, he admitted. He said he got an angry text that said take it down. That
reminds me of. So I've been listening to Tom Felton's book, or an audiobook, and he was telling a story in his book about go read it. It's awesome. But he was telling a story about how he brought his grandpa to set one day, and they were at King's Cross, and his grandpa just like took a picture with a disposable camera of the 9 scene or sign, and like security guards was like they took the camera and destroyed it.
Does this have a parallel to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Because that feels like something that Grandpa Joe would absolutely have done that caused Charlie to get kicked out of the chocolate factory.
Oh,
this is a tangent I did not see coming.
Did you know that Tom Felton's grandpa was in the first movie?
No.
He's a professor at the professor's table. Like,
love that.
Sitting like 2 people down from Dumbledore.
Love that.
Owen Wilson was a weird choice to me. I like him now, but every single time they referred to his character's name, I was like, Morbius?
Yeah.
But it's Mobius.
Mobius, yeah, because it's a Mobius loop. That's the loop that Tony Stark realizes they can go back in time on. It's
the one, not the figure 8 looking one, but the one that's circled, but it's like.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
When I was rewatching this, I was like, how? I know they're resetting the timeline when they're in the 1500s in France in this church, but Mobius just like draws a stick figure and animates it for this kid that's already scared out of his mind, and I'm like, 1500s kids, like we're already in 2022, we're freaked out by holograms. Because they can be so realistic. Like, listen, a kid, like a 9-year-old kid from 15-something France, not going to understand a hologram. And I know they're resetting the timeline, so it really doesn't matter. But I got so hung up on this for a minute.
I was like, why is this kid so, like, he hands him, what is it called, the TemPad, that little, like, iPad looking thing?
That's what I'm talking about.
He hands him that, and I'm like, why is he so okay with being handed this devil technology?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think anybody in that time frame would be like, what is this sorcery?
Exactly. I'm like, listen. And then, so what I really loved, and Sarah, unfortunately, you didn't get to live in this time with us, but during the madness of WandaVision, everyone was like, oh, Mephisto this, Mephisto that.
Yes.
Mephisto this, Mephisto that. So they ask this kid in that church, like, oh, who did this? And he points at the stained glass window of the devil. And I did not believe I was like, this is not a nod to Mephisto. Like, Mephisto's not involved in this. I was not on the Mephisto train, at least not for Loki. And I knew immediately, I was like, oh, it's a Loki because he's got devil horns. Like, that's.
Oh, I did not piece that together because one of my notes is, this devil thing never comes back.
Right. And even real Easter egg people, even like the people that do follow those Easter eggs, unlike WandaVision, they were absolutely saying, This is not Mephisto, unlike WandaVision. Where WandaVision, it was always like, is this Mephisto? Is this Mephisto? Is this Mephisto?
Yes.
This was the one where episode 1, they were like, this is not Mephisto. We do not think this is Mephisto at all. No one bring up Mephisto, which is funny.
But Mephisto madness. Just know that.
Thought Ralph was Mephisto.
I'm kind of mad that they didn't make Ralph Mephisto.
No.
Ralph in general has a lot of things that we all wish he would have paid off more.
The devil left gum for this, or is it candy or is it gum? I don't know.
I think it's
gum.
Something for this.
It's gum like Bubba Chew, I think.
It was like the name was Kablooey. I just assumed it was a fictional.
I believe it's an old gum from like the 70s though also.
Yeah.
Because even
I just assumed
the soda that Mobius later drinks is also from the 70s. So there's a lot of things that are from other timelines basically.
So Loki's on trial. His powers don't work, so he can't like manipulate or do anything.
Which is really funny.
Yeah. And he is ordered to be reset.
I love the line where Loki says he knew that the Avengers had traveled back in time because of the smell of 2 Tony Stark's colognes. And so now I just want to know what cologne Tony Stark wears.
It's Axe body spray. It's Axe body spray.
That's all I could figure. I was like, it has to be Axe.
When Ant-Man crawls into him, he says...
Do you really think that Tony Stark smells like a middle school boy?
No, it is. Yeah. It's the only thing he had in his gym bag, apparently, is when Ant-Man crawls through his suit and is unplugging things, he says, it smells like Axe body spray in here, and Tony Stark goes, it's the only thing I had in my bag.
And, because didn't he
it's better than the alternative.
Didn't he make a reference like that
It's an Infinity War. Yeah, it's Civil War. Yeah, that's the one it is, because that's when Ant-Man shrinks to get into his suit, that then later he creates nanotechnology to prevent that from happening.
This would be a wonderful segue to a Scentbird ad, but we are not there yet.
One day.
One day. This show, initially, I'm going off on a limb here, but the show is giving me Good Place vibes.
I've seen it. Yes, it does have that aspect. Well, it has that aspect because you don't really know if you can trust Mobius or the judge. I can't remember her name right now. Renslayer. Renslayer, that's it, yeah.
Ravonna Renslayer.
Yeah, so you don't know if you can trust them, if they're the good people or if they're not the good people, because you have that same impact of the Good Place, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I know my brain goes to weird places watching these, so I wasn't sure if I was like completely out on a limb there, but it was really giving me Good Place vibes, and I really wasn't, at this point in time, I was like, where the hell is this show going? Like, where, I don't even know the journey they're about to take me on, and I was not expecting any of it.
Yeah, so. It just out of left field. I also love this little, I know we know that now that Judge Renslayer is, awful or whatever, but I just love that Mobius seems to be a feminist, and he's like, I'm always looking up at you. I like it. Because she's up on the bench and he's like down there talking to her, trying to be like, no, I've got this. Let me handle the Loki. And he's like, I'm down here looking at you like I always am. I have
many a note on their solo scenes together, Mobius and Renslayer.
I don't understand their dynamic.
There's a vibe. There's a vibe between these two.
They definitely hooked up. I
could not shake this feeling, and I couldn't tell if it was just the actors having fun and having chemistry, or it was like, are they putting subtext here? Agent Mobius, basically, he explains that he specializes in dangerous variants. I can't read. And he flashes back to Loki's greatest hits and reveals that he is D.B. Cooper.
One of the best scenes. Like I already mentioned, I love the music in this whole show. Natalie Holt, the composer, just like on a new level. But the D.B. Cooper music specifically is just like, the Loki music already is like out of left field, so different from everything. And then the D.B. Cooper music is also just like to the next level, weird, out of nowhere, and I love it.
Do you want to guess what weapon the TVA used to kill people? It's called retcon. The TVA's weapon in the comics is called retroactive continuity, or retcon.
Iconic.
Really?
Iconic.
That is what Mr. Mobius also created the Tesseract, apparently. Because he's also called Mr. Tesseract and Mr. Orboscorus and a few other things in the comics.
One thing that I think is really important about this whole, like, them showing him his story, and the question I kind of have is, like, what is the advantage that Mobius is trying to achieve by showing him his past? Like, is it just to, like, reduce him as his soul? Or, like, like, is that really the only purpose? Because, like, I guess...
Think about it. I mean, if you were shown your death, you would...
No, he didn't show him his death, though. Loki showed himself his death.
Loki showed himself. That's right.
Yeah, Mobius stopped. And then he had to go, and then he stole the whole pad and all that stuff. But, like, what I really thought was interesting is that he really emphasized the whole idea that Loki wanted to be king of Earth and then of space. And in Mobius's mind and in this whole universe that we were just getting introduced to is the idea that time is greater than space. Right? And so I feel like that's kind of what he's planting the seed of, is like, you're thinking too small, buddy. You're thinking way too small. That if you think that that's actually something to achieve, let me introduce you to time.
Shout out to Tom Hiddleston's acting. He's literally staring at a blank screen, just like sobbing his eyes out.
Especially in that, because I have a note that he has faced some uncomfortable truths about his mom's death. And
that was bad.
His reaction to this, it, like...
Because he thought he was sending them to Thor.
Yeah. I will never fully understand actors reacting to nothing in this such an organic, incredible way. Like, the amount of emotion, you would think that a puppy was just murdered in front of him. Sorry to get graphic. I don't know why I said that.
He was just, like, staring at a blank wall for God knows how long, all day, sobbing his eyes out, thinking of how Loki would feel in this moment. Also, Dark World Loki hits different.
I'm not gonna lie, some of those early episodes for me are kind of a blur.
But I also think, this calls back to your question of, like, the Good Place kind of reference about this, is, in my opinion, while rewatching this made me feel like it was torture. Like, rewatching his story felt like torture, because we've actually now seen his growth through Infinity War. And so there's a side of us that are sitting there going, like, no, well, he says, and he actually says this in it, he says, we always take the wrong path, was a quote that was said, that he says in it. I actually feel like we know that he has more room for growth. And so this felt like torture, because we're sitting there going, like, this is not how you trigger him. Like, he's actually got stuff in him that's of substance.
Yeah, I have that note for a later episode, because Ravonna, I think it's episode 2, Ravonna Renslayer says she doesn't think Lokis are capable of change. And Mobius agrees with her. And I'm like, how can you not think he's capable of change if Mobius is the Loki expert? He's done all this research on all these different variants, and he has this Loki's lifetime, greatest hits.
I mean, he's never seen one change, though.
Right, but he's got this what this Loki's trajectory is supposed to be if he doesn't branch off. So
the sacred timeline proves that he can change.
Yeah, this Loki, even though he's a variant, should still be capable of that change.
He still tried. He still stole the Tesseract from the Asgardian basement.
Right. No, all the stuff that leads up to it, once he gets back and starts actually going through Ragnarok and all those other things, we see progress. And if that's the sacred timeline that they believe in, why don't they believe that this variant can change? And I think my last, like, kind of thing on episode 1 that I, like, kind of, like, my bow on it was, how is him grabbing the Tesseract not within his character? Why would they imagine, what was he supposed to do if not become a variant? I think that's the question I had, is, like, his character is to grab the Tesseract to escape. They talk about it multiple times. Of course he's going to grab the Tesseract if it's at his feet. Like, how did they expect him to react if in the right timeline he's not supposed to kick it, but in Endgame, if Endgame is supposed to be real and it's supposed to land at his feet, how is that not the sacred timeline?
to some interesting conversations.
Yeah, because even Mobius said Lokis are destined to fail. It's your place in the timeline to fail. And every battle Loki has had that we've seen, he has lost. Every single one of them. New York, fighting Thanos, all of them, he's lost. Mm-hmm. So I think this was the first time Loki won, and so which made him the variant at that point. Was because he successfully got the Tesseract and escaped.
Yeah. So they need Loki's help to stop variant Loki from killing them. Oh, he also sees the Infinity Stones in the receptionist drawer.
I love that.
So great scene. And at the same time, he also threatens to turn the guy into a fish, and the guy goes, "What's a fish?" That was also a great moment too. It's like the guy didn't know what a fish was.
Again, kind of harkening back to the same, like to the Good Place. It was a very Good Place joke. I feel like. Shout out to Michael Schur, who makes some of the best comedies ever.
True.
The Good Place and Brooklyn Nine-Nine are like my favorite shows of all time. I love those shows so much, and like those shows never.
And they do end up showing, the only one that's not in the drawer is Vision, but they do show it in the credits. They show it actually the Vision Stone being used as a paperweight. So there was a question at first where people were like, is it because they didn't have Vision in this whole thing? And then it's like, oh wait, no, it's used it as a paperweight. It's just probably the prettiest one because it's the yellow one, you know?
I hadn't, at this point in time, had not quite grasped the, I don't know if I even now fully grasped like the different timelines aspect. And I was like, are those the real ones? Are they fake?
No, they're all just different timeline of Infinity Stones.
I love how they exist in every timeline. So the hunter comes in and he puts the collar on her, and then they go to, the show flashes to Salina, Oklahoma, 1858. Is it Salina? Is it Selena? I don't know.
It's probably, I don't know, because like we're in Texas podcast audience, and there is a place called Salina, Texas, and it is spelled, you would think it would be Selena, but it's Salina, and there's also a bunch of places.
There's also Grand.
Salina's on the border. No, but Salina's on the border. And I actually think part of it exists in Oklahoma and part of it exists in Texas, I think, actually. Because it goes Prosper, Salina. Yeah, it's just not huge. But I'm pretty sure it's the same city because it is that close. It's that close, yeah.
I know it's not important, but, you know, shout out.
Maybe I might be wrong, but yeah.
That's what I do. I linger on things that don't matter.
That's fine. So do we.
Someone sets everything on fire before they can reset. And then that's the end of episode 1. And then we go to episode 2 called The Variant. And we go to Oshkosh, Wisconsin in 1985, which I'm originally from, like, northern Illinois. And we used to go to Wisconsin all the time. So, like, seeing the name Oshkosh is, like, very weird to me.
I wore those overalls, yes. I was going to say Oshkosh Bagosh, yes. When I was growing up, I was a little child in Oshkosh Bagosh overalls. Yes, that was me.
Shout out to Wisconsin. They're at a Renaissance fair. I've never been to a Renaissance fair. It seems like a vibe.
We did Medieval Times for my birthday this year. Kate surprised me.
I love Medieval Times. I'm so glad you mentioned it. I'm so glad you mentioned it. I want to go to Medieval Times. I want to take Matthew because he's never been. It's so underrated.
Neither of us had been, and we ended up in like the bad nights section, and so we were like, oh, this is questionable.
I've been a handful of times to Medieval Times, and I've never been on a team that won, like, ever. But the food is
great. Are you Loki there?
No, there's not a Loki there. There's also not 80s music. I love an 80s needle drop.
So this battle scene is scored by Holding Out for a Hero.
Iconic.
Chef's kiss. It was beautiful. I love that, like, even, I don't want to know if they did this on purpose or what, but if you look at it closely, like, some of the swings and stuff are, like, to the beat of the music. It's incredible. And, like, I have a hard time believing it's not planned. But
you're speaking to my soul. I used to dance. You have to believe the choreographer for the fights did this on purpose. So I love...
Is it stunt coordinator? Is it choreographer? Are they the same thing?
I think they're different, but they work in tandem.
Okay. The variant Loki overtakes the commander. Oh, it's like this hooded figure, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's the commander. I think it was just one of the people.
I have it written down as commander.
I thought C-15, who she takes, was the commander.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
I think C-15 is in charge.
And then Miss Minutes is quizzing Loki on everything, which if in high school I could have a Miss Minutes quizzing me on random things, that would be fantastic. I would have done better on tests. There's this quote where it says, "Where there are wolf's ears, teeth are near."
I think that was actually the poster of the episode too. Is like each episode has like an actual design that they've made too, and it was that quote also. That was the promotional poster for this episode. Was that quote that you just said?
That's great.
So good call out.
Yeah, I wrote it down because I thought it was just a really interesting. I mean, Loki speaks a lot in riddles a lot of the time, so I kind of figured it would come back eventually, but I just thought it was an interesting choice of words.
He's a mischievous scamp, right? So he has to speak in riddles. I do think that like the fact that it's a dirtier environment, considering like where later we get into a pristine superstore kind of thing later in this episode, is also a good contrast where like they start out in one location and end in another location, and like where this episode obviously takes us with the introduction of like who the variant is that they're searching for. It is interesting that this is where those little shadows that variant hides in is across all different kinds of landscapes.
They reset the timeline, and then Mobius has a scene where he meets with Ravonna.
And we already kind of hit this home, but this is where we're talking about like Mobius says he's studied Loki's entire life, so he should know that he's capable of change. Ravonna doesn't believe that Loki is capable of change, but Mobius, to me, is the subject matter expert here. So I don't understand how they don't think he's capable of change, even though he's picked up from a different part of the timeline.
And this is the scene I was picking up some subtext between these two.
Yeah. Very, very, very strange.
I mean, you don't really see anybody else meet privately, though, either. Like, that was what was interesting about this, is usually people are around other people when they're having these conversations. This felt like something where they were comfortable talking alone.
I wonder if that's a thing that they will explore eventually, or it was completely accidental.
Good question.
I don't know. I don't think we actually find that answer, at least in this series. So if it's something in the future, especially with what happens at the end, we'll probably find out, because that would be how the sacred timeline's supposed to take out, right? Because they're also kind of on it.
Yeah. So then Loki is trying to check out some files, and he finds the record for the destruction of Asgard. And at this point, this Loki doesn't know. Well, he knows about Ragnarok because he saw that highlight reel, but he doesn't know what happened.
Yeah.
Right. This is like his first kind of come to Jesus with what happens and how he plays a role in it. And it even says on that piece of paper, it says the Revengers is the code name, which I loved was like a callback to Ragnarok and Thor calling them the Revengers.
Loki basically figures out that he has this like light bulb moment that variant Loki, who we later find out is Sylvie, is hiding in apocalypses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love their experiment to figure out if that
the salad.
The salad?
Oh, when he's explaining how the apocalypses work, and then when they go to Mount Vesuvius.
Pompeii, yeah.
I also love the quote when they're talking in the cafeteria before they go on the experiment, and Loki tells Mobius, no one bad is ever truly bad, and no one good is ever truly good. And I feel like that really applies to the best villains, especially like when you're looking at Marvel villains. Two of the best villains are Killmonger from Black Panther. He wasn't wrong that Wakanda should be helping the world, especially disenfranchised Black people, but killing his cousin to become king of Wakanda and the Black Panther and just giving vibranium weapons to whoever agreed with him is wrong. And Thanos, I'm not on the Thanos was right train, but Thanos was not wrong, because we are low on resources for the size of the population. But
Thanos he had a good idea, but was definitely misguided.
Yes, exactly. He just snapping away half the population of the entire universe. Very wrong. He could have also just added resources with all the power that he had.
But I think Thanos is right, and I think that actually the fact that you snap your fingers and half the population disappears, there's actually no subjectivity to that whole thing, which was actually good. And adding more resources when we have a surplus of resources just makes people consume more. So I would not necessarily say that would solve it the same way. But I do think that this quote is really important because it is where, and just so everyone knows, the example of Killmonger, I think, is a really good example for this. We don't know what the next Black Panther is at the time of this recording, but there is a possibility that is going to have repercussions in the next Black Panther, because even though Killmonger was right, was he right? Because we don't know yet in the next Black Panther, which is going to explore the people who don't want that to happen. So
right.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Wakanda Forever. At the point of this recording, I think the trailer dropped, a week ago or so?
Yeah.
And it's about to come out.
It's out on the 11th.
And when we first started this podcast, I watched all the trailers, and then it, kind of impeded my opinions somewhat, so I stopped watching trailers. And I try to, just when I go on the internet and see anything Marvel related, which is very hard to avoid, I just, put my blinders on, and I'm like, I don't see anything. So,
welcome to our side. Welcome to our fandom. We welcome you in. You are one of us now.
Kate's boyfriend definitely tried to do that before Endgame. He was like, I'm not watching any trailers before Endgame. He wanted to be completely surprised.
I've never been this far into a fandom that doesn't...
There is actually source material.
I guess it technically has, but not in the way.
Right.
Obviously with Harry Potter, spoilers, we all knew Dobby was gonna die.
No, I'm just joking.
Don't spoil it for Matthew.
He's read all the books, so so it's not gonna be for the very first time.
Okay, let's go with the Secrets of Dumbledore. Let's spoil that one because no one needs to see that movie anyways.
It was announced. Did you guys know that it was announced? This is a total side tangent. It was announced today they're not making any more Fantastic Beasts movies.
Thank God.
Kate
that was my reaction to it.
We raged for an hour after we saw
on Twitter, which normally I don't spoil things on Twitter. I am very anti-spoilers, but I almost spoiled it because I want people to not go see it.
We raged in our own text messages. We raged on Twitter. We were just like, oh my God.
Please, no one go see this.
We were not going to pay extra money to watch it, but we watched it on HBO Max when it came out. And the entire movie, both of us were like, what? What is this? This makes no sense.
Yeah, we saw it for free because I won free movie tickets, and that was the only way I was going to see it in theaters. And so I was like, hey, Kate, I only won these movie tickets because of you. So
it broke every single one of its rules that had been carefully established throughout however many years of the Harry Potter series. The entire thing was broken, and it's like, this is supposed to be a prequel. How is this all breaking all the rules that, and no one cares?
Anyway, this is not our Fantastic Beasts podcast. We will quite possibly do it on our Patreon.
Patreon! Do that one on the Patreon.
Only if we can roast it, but also I don't want to watch it again.
That's the reason why, is you get people to pay in the Patreon for you to then roast it, and you talk about how every scene is so stupid and does not make sense whatsoever. Yeah.
Anywho, Pompeii.
Another disaster. Let's go back to this other disaster.
I love how this entire podcast has been. So anyway, 1549 France.
So in Pompeii, Loki was just not torturing people, but messing with people in the funniest way.
Yeah. And we then go to Alabama in 2050. We go to a Rocks Cart is the name of the store.
It's basically just a Walmart, Amazon hybrid.
Here's the thing.
It's a Walmart that took over a town.
Here's the thing. Okay, this is 2050, so it's not it's 2022 currently, so it's maybe 30 years in the future. I'm bad at math. But 30 years in the future is enough for there to be superstores that have advanced in technology. I I think that most superstores will probably go the way of like the Amazon store where like there's no cashiers.
The fact that there is a retail store in the future is astounding. Let's just go with that as the whole thing, where this is where it's like, is this real? Because, I mean, I don't know if they've been to a mall recently, but they're not thriving anymore.
A moment right before they go to Rock's cart, Mobius hands Loki his knives, and B-15 immediately takes them away. And it's one of the funniest moments in this show for me. It's so funny. She's like, I don't think so. And it's
But it's also establishing that Loki and Mobius are starting to bond a little. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's also important, knowing that Mobius is on the side of the TVA, that he can relate to Loki and start trusting him is a big, big thing for this show.
I mean, would you give Loki knives?
Yes. I think it would be fun.
If I need everybody to be all hands on deck to protect our lives, like, I'd rather have Loki turn the table and kill me than whatever we're chasing that we don't know what it is.
I mean, the whole, so, side note, that I just came up with this idea.
This is the podcast of tangents.
Yes.
We should just call this the Tangent Podcast.
Mobius, wanting to own a jet ski, could he have a memory of a jet ski?
Yeah.
I believe so. I believe that's what keeps fueling him in the background.
What about a jet ski does that for you?
Well, I think that was his previous life. Yeah.
Yeah, in his previous life he might have owned one.
Is it a Patronus situation where it's like your happiest memory?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I believe it is that there's something still planted in the back of his mind that connects him to a jet ski.
Something about a jet ski that he just wants to own.
I mean, I've been on a jet ski. It's not that fun.
But what if you were a professional jet ski racer and that was your happy moment? Like, that could be the one thing that got, it's those kinds of things where you're just sitting there going like, I cannot believe that someone created this. For him, it was riding a jet ski. He was like, I can't believe someone made this.
What if he's remembering an alternate timeline where instead of being Lightning McQueen, he is Jet Ski McQueen?
Wow, we just made Cars reference, everybody.
I did not know where you were going with that sentence whatsoever.
This is now a Cars podcast. Let's go. Brad Paisley's going to start playing some music. No, it's Rascal Flatts. Rascal Flatts is playing, yes.
Life is a highway. Life is a jet ski wake. Anyway, so they get to Rock's cart and it's thundering, it's storming, and I think it's really cute that Loki looks up when it thunders.
Oh, that is cute. That is so cute. I didn't even think of that.
So the variant is disguised as Hunter B-15.
Yeah, B-15.
The main hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And then he transfers into the worker, and there's this like whole fight scene, and then he transfers into this like big burly lumberjack looking dude. And then variant Loki sets a bomb, and we learn that Loki is a woman. There is a lady Loki.
Yeah. In the comics, Loki is gender fluid in the comics.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh, it's actually it's on his paperwork. It's on his paperwork in the first episode too. It says fluid.
In the comics, he's gender fluid. That's why they could go with the female Loki.
Mm-hmm.
But the female Loki in the comics is where it looks the exact same as. Just imagine Tom Hiddleston with long hair, like very, very long hair.
Her haircut is honestly something that I feel like I'd see and I'd be like, I could pull that off, right? And then I'd walk in and my hairstylist would be like, no, you cannot do this at all to save your life.
Has literally the same haircut.
But it's like, no, now she does. Well, because she had the faux hawk for a little while.
No, I mean, in the original Captain Marvel movie, she has the same haircut.
So are they both from the 90s then?
No, Sylvie says she was pruned before Loki was born.
But from what she was, she's from before Loki was even born. And Loki's like 2,000, like maybe 1,200 years old.
Yeah.
So Sylvie has to be older than Odin. Because Odin is about 5,000 years old, 3,000 years old, something like that.
Is her dad not Odin?
No, technically, so all Lokis are Jolton.
Right, that's what I thought.
Right.
Laufey.
Yeah, her paperwork says she's She's Laufey daughter.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all Lokis are, besides Alligator Loki, which I'm not 100% sure of.
The only reason I know it's Laufey is because our son is obsessed with the "We Didn't Start the Fire" Marvel song. Our son is obsessed with it, and I basically memorized it.
There's a Marvel version of it that they did for Endgame.
Yeah.
It was a Jimmy Fallon thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, the last week in this episode is that Loki walks through the door. Yeah, that is the end of episode 2.
And we see all the timelines starting to break. Right? Or is that next?
I think
That's next.
That's next. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the end of episode 1 of Loki week. What are you guys' thoughts on the first 2 episodes?
Well, considering like there are a couple other TV shows where they do 9 episodes, I think that the 6 episodes of Loki and these 2 being the start really made you interested. I think that they did a really good job of packing a lot in there. But again, like we said, Mobius is friends with Loki now. But we also can tell that Mobius likes Rowena. And so it's all these things where you're just sitting there going like, okay, what's going to happen? Who is Miss Minutes? You have a lot of questions that just leave you wanting to also follow Sylvie into that portal and go, okay, what's next? I'm in. That's how I felt watching these first 2 episodes, for sure.
What are your thoughts, Frances?
I'm obsessed. You know that. I was very into it. We love to see some hair flips from Loki. We're going to get a lot more of those in the next few episodes. You can't go wrong with some Tom Hiddleston. I mean, that's Tom Hiddleston's real hair, y'all. If you didn't know, he's not wearing a wig in this show. He's worn wigs and he's worn wigs as Loki before. He's not wearing a wig in this show.
It's like Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's like Lin-Manuel Miranda wearing the Hamilton. Yep, he grew that hair out. That was his original hair. Later on, when he went to Puerto Rico, he wore a wig. But that was his real hair in the initial Hamilton, and it was like, ooh. But not Tom Hiddleston. Tom's looks great.
He does have a glorious mane.
Good callback to Glorious Purpose, too.
I mean, what is it about the gods of Asgard that just have beautiful hair?
Just all attractive, period.
I guess they don't have to worry about going bald on Asgard.
No, because even Odin had a bunch of hair too.
Anthony Hopkins is a freaking legend. I love him.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for being here today. And we will, you guys will join us the rest of the week, hopefully. So join us on Wednesday for episodes 3 and 4, and we shall see you on Wednesday.
Bye.
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 If you would like to send us any feedback or any messages, you can follow us over on Instagram at thefanclub_podcast or on Twitter at fanclub_podcast. Or you can discuss each episode with us over on our subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/thefanclubpodcast. And make sure that you tune in every Marvel Monday.